Well, hey there. I know you were expecting Mark, and we are actually two different people, completely different. He's much older than me. But in this bonus lesson, I am gonna go over some of the differences between a layer-based compositor, After Effects, and a node-based compositor, Fusion. Now, node-based compositors are extremely powerful, and they're really, really common at the higher end of the visual effects industry. In motion design, pretty much everyone still uses After Effects, but I thought it could be useful if you were at least aware of why node-based compositors are so powerful. And listen, if you get into visual effects, if you really enjoy this class and you want to go even deeper, at some point you're going to run into Fusion or Nuke or some other node-based app, and it will be helpful to at least be aware of how they work and why you may want to pick one up. All right, so let's start in After Effects. Now, I thought that the Do Your Homework video was kind of the perfect example to go through to show you the differences between the layer-based and the node-based approaches. And this shot here really kind of sums it all up. So let's go over what we're looking at. There's a background plate. There are two foreground elements, that were shot, the devil and the angel. They were both shot against green screen. They both required multiple layers and multiple techniques of matte generation, keying, rotoscoping, doing a core matte and an edge matte, things like that Mark taught you. There's a whole lot of stuff going on here just to get clean edges and a good matte on both of these. And then there's also some glows, there's some movement, a slight wiggle, there's a lot happening. But what do we see in After Effects? We see 4 layers, all right? And technically, if you go down to the bottom where the background plate is, that's 5. So you see 5 layers. And some of these layers, for example, this devil layer, which is also a pre-comp, has a whole lot of stuff going on. It's got this Gaussian blur, it's got this hue and saturation effect, it's got this levels effect. The turbulent displace effect has an expression on it. I'm not sure what it's doing though. There's a mask on it also, but I don't know if that mask is simply there to be referenced by some of these effects, or if this is a mask for the whole layer. None of that is clear just looking at this timeline here. And then underneath, you've got this footage layer that also has some masks on it. And in the lesson, you'll remember this was Mark doing a really heroic effort and a really cool demonstration of how powerful After Effects is as a compositor, doing almost all of the keying in one layer. And actually, I think he did manage to pull it off. All of the matte generation is done in this one layer. Of course, in order to do that, you can see a lot of these effects have masks tied to them. Not sure which masks. There's, a Mocha AE effect that I don't know what that's doing versus what the masks are doing. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that there's a lot going on here. Let's just look at one of these angel pre-comps here, because I think this is another example that we got to look at. This is the sort of finished and I believe spill suppressed result of the angel key. And actually, let me double check that. Nope, never mind. The spill suppressor happens after that. So again, I wasn't even sure by looking at the pre-comp where the spill suppression was happening, but I see a bunch of different layers here, all working together to build this up. The result is fantastic. I don't want you to get the impression that After Effects is not a worthy compositor. It's amazing. It can do, a fantastic job. What I want you to notice is how much of the work Mark did is kind of hidden from you. And this is very, very nice when it comes to timing things out. That's why After Effects is also an incredible animation tool. When it comes to compositing, it's also an incredible tool, but the way you have to think to composite is very different than in a node-based tool. And basically the big downside of After Effects as a compositor is things are hidden from you. This angel is moving. I don't know how. I would have to go into the position property to notice that there's an expression, to see the expression. Everything that was done to create this image is hidden from me until I look for it, and I have to know to look for it. Okay, so now let's hop into Fusion and see how a shot like this could be done in a node-based compositor. All right, now I just want to warn you real quick, when we go into Fusion, when you see it for the first time, It's a little weird. Node-based compositors work totally differently, and this is not a Fusion tutorial. I'm not gonna teach you how to use Fusion or really how to do compositing in a node-based app. I just want you to see it. I want you to be aware that this is a thing, and then later on down the road, you can decide if this is an area you'd like to explore, if this is a tool you'd like to pick up. All right, here we go. Oh my God, what are we looking at? I know, it's scary. There's all these little noodles and nodes and there's stuff everywhere. What the heck are we looking at? All right, bear with me. I'm gonna take you through this. So this is DaVinci Fusion, a node-based compositor, and this is actually the free version of Fusion, which comes with DaVinci Resolve, which is an editing program, and also a color correction program. It's an incredibly powerful tool. It may not be free forever. By the time you watch it, it may not be free anymore. There's also a paid version. You can check out the information. We'll link to it in the notes for this module. But more or less, this is what a node-based compositor looks like. And I'm just gonna expand this up so you can see the node tree here, all right? This is the node tree. And if I zoom in, you'll start to see some descriptions pop up. Now, I'm gonna walk you through this, all right? I'm not gonna rebuild this entire thing for you because it would take too long, but I did rebuild most of one of the shots that Mark did using Fusion. And to start, this node here, this is actually just the shot of me in a double suit against a green screen. If I pull this back down, I can actually look at that shot and there it is, okay? It's just that one little shot, 36 frames, no biggie. But then what's happening to that shot is essentially told like a story through these nodes, okay? And so looking here, I can see that this shot is first being split into a few different things. And one of the great things about node-based compositors is they almost all have some simple way of giving you a place to take notes or to tell the next compositor what's going on here. So this is just a small group of nodes that are essentially pulling a key for the upper part of this piece of footage. It's doing that by using this polygon mask that I created, okay? So if I look at the keyer, but I click on the polygon mask, and let me make this viewer a little bit bigger just so you can see what's going on here. You see this green outline. This green outline is this mask, which I can clearly see is connected to the keyer because there's this visual link to it, okay? So already just by looking at this, I know that there's a keyer and that there is a mask attached to it and I can look through that keyer, right? Another great thing about node-based compositors is they make it really easy to see multiple things at the same time. So for example, if I click this little button, I now have two viewers that I can use. So why don't we go all the way here to the very end to media out. This is essentially like the node that renders this, right? Now you can see that there's a little dot there. So that means it's already piped into viewer 2. But if I hit 2, it will deactivate it. Then if I hit 2 again, it loads it into viewer 2. And now what I can do is look through any other node in viewer 1. So I can start just by looking at this. And then I can sort of walk through my composite and see that to start with, let me hit Command F here so I can sort of fit this to my viewer. I can see that to start with, I have this nice sort of upper mat. Then I have a core mat here, right? And so the core mat was done, and you could see as soon as I did that, let me zoom in so you can see what happened with my face. You can see that the mat on my face, I can even look at the alpha channel. If I look at the chroma key here, this first one, you can see there's a whole bunch of gray pixels on my head, which I don't like. But then over here, I have another copy of the keyer that is doing a really crappy job with the edges, but fills in all those holes. But the edges suck. So I ran that into a node called Erode Dilate, which it's like a matte choker. And then I used that, this little matte control node, which essentially knocks out my image based on that new matte. And then I put that on top of my edge matte. So I did the exact same thing that Mark did in After Effects, creating a core matte here and an edge matte here and merging them together, A over B. So this is the first major difference that you're gonna notice with a node-based compositor like Fusion. You do not have anything like layers. Here's one of the medium close-up shots of the angel in After Effects. And here it's very easy to see that you have a core matte, right? and you have an edge matte. And the only difference is the settings on key light and some of the effects that are on each of these layers, right? The core matte is essentially just making sure there's no holes in the middle. And then the edge matte is just concerned with the edges. And you put the edge matte on top of the core matte. It's very easy to see. And if you've been using After Effects, it's super intuitive that whatever layer is on top gets composited with the layers underneath. Not so in a node-based compositor. In Fusion, A over B happens inside of a merge node. And this is gonna make a lot more sense. I am actually going to do some compositing for you. But I kind of wanted to walk you through all of this just so you could see, as busy as this looks, as many steps as you're seeing, as many little nodes are here, all of this had to be done in After Effects. The difference is here, it's clear what was done. And it gets really, really granular. So if I zoom in just so you can sort of see what these nodes are, right? This hue curves node, this is actually what is doing the spill suppression for me. Over here, this node, all of these, this keyer and then this glow, this is actually what created the glow for me over the red part of the devil. This node here is called a transform node. And this may shock you because in After Effects, moving and scaling something is just so automatic and intuitive, you don't even think of it as a step. In a node-based compositor, even scaling something down is a step that now has a node associated with it. Here's a light wrap. There's a whole bunch of things that led to this result. And they're all clearly visible here, and it's kind of nice. All right, now I want to start with an empty Fusion node tree here. And I'm gonna rebuild a little piece of this just to sort of show you the workflow and talk through some of the major differences, all right? So the first thing I'm gonna do is just grab my two shots here from my media pool. I'm gonna drag them right in, okay? And you'll see that Fusion has already given me a little bit of a hint as to what it thinks I want to do, all right? So I have two nodes here, media in one, media in two, and if I hit the one key on either one of those, it will load that into this viewer. And if I hit the 2 key on the other one, it will load that into the other viewer, okay? And you'll see that as I play them, they play back in sync, which is nice. Now, this shot is only 36 frames, this devil shot, and this is the background plate. It's not synced up, it's not in the right spot. I'm not gonna get into how to do that in Fusion, but it is a much longer shot. And so you can see that if I scrub the playhead too far, this clip keeps going and this one doesn't. So in a node-based compositor, there is something that sort of, kind of is like a timeline. If I click on this keyframes button, you'll see that you can see both clips here, but the truth is that it's not really a layer stack like After Effects, okay? This is a timeline and you can use it to adjust the timing of clips and things like that. What you cannot do is, for example, take media 1 and put it under media 2 and reverse their composite order. It does not work that way at all. This merge node here, this is what's doing all the dirty work, okay? So first thing I'm gonna do is just rename this to Devil Shot, right? Just so it's a little bit clearer. And I'm gonna rename this to Background Plate. And the Devil Shot, I can even give it a color just to make it a little easier. A lot of the features that you have in After Effects to help you organize things, they exist in different ways in Fusion, or if you use Nuke, it has similar features there too. Now, this merge node, let's talk about this here, all right? So first, let me select the merge node and hit 2. And now in this viewer, viewer 2, I am looking through the result of the merge node. And I even get a little hint right there. Okay, so what's happening? You can see these cool little colored arrows all over the merge node. Different nodes have different inputs and things that you're allowed to connect to them. For example, if I add a matte control node like this, you'll see that it's got a green, a yellow, a blue, but it's also got these extra white ones on the edge. And if I hover my mouse over them and I look in the bottom left corner of the screen, as I move my mouse around, you'll see that there are different inputs into this node, okay? So for a merge node, the main inputs you're gonna be concerned with are the background, the foreground, and the effect mask, okay? Now, you have heard Mark use the term A over B already in this class. And that really comes from the world of node-based compositing, that terminology, A over B. A, in this case, is the devil. B, in this case, is the background plate. So first thing I need to do is make sure that the merge node knows that this is A. So I'm gonna take this, this yellow arrow and drag a little pipe out. And you can see that when I hover, this is the background. So I'm gonna plug that into my background plate. This is the foreground. I'm gonna go like that. One quick thing I'm gonna do is control click in here, and I'm gonna go to my options and turn on orthogonal pipes, which is just gonna sort of make them always maintain a right angle. And for sort of semi-OCD people like myself, it's a great little feature, okay? So now, if I look through this merge node, all I see is my foreground, of course, because it's the exact same size as the background. And so what I wanna do is scale that sucker down so I can sort of, roughly place it. Well, like I mentioned, I don't just click on the devil shot piece of footage here and then use transform controls, right? It does not work like After Effects. Instead, what I'm gonna do is add a transform node. Now here's my transform node. And you can see the transform node can accept this, which is an input, or this, which is an effect mask. And I have to be very careful where I put this transform node, right? If I put it after the merge node, like that, well, now I'm transforming the result of the merge node. And that's not what I want. What I want is to transform the A shot, the devil shot, before I composite it, merge it over the B shot. So I can hover over this pipe and hold shift, and now that transform is connected. And now with that transform node selected, I see some on-screen controls pop up, and they're pretty faint because they're actually green and red, and this shot has a lot of green and red. But also you'll notice over here is the inspector in Fusion, and I can use this very much like the controls in After Effects to scale things. And I can just grab this, this footage and move it like this. And now you can see exactly what's happening, okay? And to be very clear, I can walk step by step through this. I start with a devil shot. It gets run through a transform node. Running this shot through a transform node in Fusion literally is creating a 1920 by 1080 piece of footage that only has pixels right here. And so what that means is if I added a glow node after the transform, the glow would work on just this portion of the shot, but the scale of the glow would be really easy to dial in, versus if I put the glow before the transform, then I would have to crank that glow up really big, knowing I'm gonna scale this down. And in After Effects, that's the kind of thing you have to juggle, whereas in a node-based compositor, it's really easy to pick. Do I want the glow here? Do I want the glow here? Okay? All right, so I've transformed the shot, and now if I look through the merge node, here we go, we've got a composite. Of course, it's not keyed, all right? So let's do a little bit of keying here. Now, of course, I'm gonna want the keying to happen before the transform, okay? So I'm just gonna grab these nodes, kind of scoot them over, give myself some room, and then I'm just gonna look at the devil shot, okay? Now, first thing I'm gonna wanna do is, the same kind of thing that Mark did. I'm kind of just looking at the shot and I'm deciding, what are the major pieces I'm gonna wanna do? I know, because I watched Mark's lesson, which is kind of cheating, that I'm definitely gonna want a separate mask and a separate keyable area for the bottom, because just the color of the floor is way different, than the wall and stuff like that. So here's what I'm gonna do. I am going to create a keyer. And in Fusion, there's a lot of different keyers it comes with. I'm just gonna use a really simple one, the chroma keyer. And so I'm just gonna add the chroma keyer. Here it is. And you can see it's got different inputs. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just drag from my devil shot into the chroma keyer. Now, I want you to notice that this shot is going into two places now. It's going into the transform, which goes into the merge. It's also going into the chroma keyer. And this is one of the best things about node-based compositors, and you'll see in a moment why I'm able to use this shot in one place rather than having to duplicate it or pre-comp it and then use copies of that pre-comp. You don't have to do all that fancy footwork in a node-based program like Fusion. So here's my chroma key here, and the controls are very, very simple. And I'm just gonna give myself a little more room here to work. So if I just drag my mouse like this, it's going to select all of those pixels in that little range and remove them. And if I hit A, I can see the alpha channel and I can see what it's done, okay? So what I wanna do here is take Mark's approach of just doing as little as possible, really. I wanna do just enough to get a good result, but not so much that I kind of ruin my edges. And an example of that would be, it might be tempting to just go like this. And look, it looks like it almost worked, right? The problem is my edges are going to be so terrible, right? And you can see they're pretty bad already. So I'm gonna undo that and I'm just gonna start here and I might try to get rid of a little more than that, but I'm not gonna touch the floor. Don't worry about all these little doodads here. This keyer works very differently than Keylight. If you do move into Fusion or Nuke, you're gonna have to learn how their keyers work, and they are very different than Keylight, so it's just something to know. So looking at this, you see the edges are horrific. That's because there's one more step to do. I'm gonna lock my color picking, and then I'm going to up the soft range. And what I'm basically gonna do is just zoom way in, and I kind of wanna find a piece of the shot here that has some blur on it. Like right here is a good spot, right? So by default, you have no soft range. And if I crank it all the way up, you can see that you get amazing edges, right? But you're also, like, you've got some giant holes, right? Holes that would probably be difficult to fill. So what I'm gonna do is kind of walk this back a little bit to try and help myself out, okay? All right, and as you know from watching Mark's lesson, there's other ways of dealing with this, but like this is pretty decent looking matte for the blurriest part of the footage, okay? Next thing I can do is come over to my chroma key here, and the same way that you had the black level and the white level in Keylight, you've got threshold here, right? And so what I can do is kind of look around and see if I notice any noise. And to be honest, I'm not seeing much that I'm too concerned with. But what I can do is boost this black threshold just to see if that helps at all. I'm not even sure I'm gonna have to, but I can also lower this white threshold, right? And before I do that, I do wanna kind of be zoomed in so I can make sure I'm not ruining all this beautiful detail by doing that, okay? Because I know I can also generate a core matte for most of this, okay? Cool. So now I've got, like pretty decent edge matte for the upper part of the shot. And if I look at it, there you go. Now it'd be cool if I could also sort of preview that over my background plate at the same time. So in order to do that, all I have to do is unplug from the transform node and now plug in the result from my chroma key. And there it is, okay? Now you can see, obviously, that I'm gonna need a garbage mask for this. And fortunately, the chroma key node actually has a garbage matte input that I can put right into it. So to do a mask in After Effects, the mask lives on the layer, right? I mean, there's of course other ways you can use track mats, but in any case, a mask has to be on a layer, where in a node-based compositor, that's not the case. A mask is a node, and that node can be piped into other nodes many times over. So what I need to do is select the polygon tool here, okay? And so the polygon tool in Fusion, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, is a node. So if I click on the node and I'm looking at, say, the chroma key, right? So I hit 1 to look at the chroma key, but I have the polygon node selected. You'll notice that I have some buttons up here that appeared, right? So some nodes have their own little interfaces, and so this is one of them. So what I wanna do is just draw a simple mask, and I'm not gonna do a great job here. I'm just kind of doing this quickly so I can demonstrate all this stuff for you. All right, so there we go. So now if I look at that, look what this polygon node has created, a black and white matte. And if I then pipe the output of that into my chroma key, what do I get? I get the opposite of what I want. Some of the nodes in Fusion ask for a garbage matte, but what they're actually expecting is a matte for the things you don't want, not the things you do. So I have a few options. What I could do is actually in the chroma key settings, go to the garbage matte options down here and just click invert. I could also go into my polygon and invert it, but that's a little less intuitive. And then in my polygon node, I can soften the edges a little bit, right? Right, there you go. And what's great is I can see the result, no matter what I'm looking at. So it's really pretty easy. Like there's a problem there. Okay, cool. I'm gonna need to fix that. And Fusion is also smart enough to show me that mask kind of in context, even scaled down over a background, okay? Super duper powerful. So now I've got part of my key done. So now if I wanted to do his legs, and they're also my legs, by the way, how would I do that? Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Let me give myself a little more room for my nodes here. And all I'm gonna do is just copy and paste this setup, and I'm going to run another copy of the devil shot into the chroma key, okay? Just like that. Now I'm gonna show you a really neat trick here, okay? So I'm gonna let me undo that. So because I know I'm gonna have this devil shot going into a bunch of different places, it'd be nice if I could just sort of have it go into one node, and then from there it could just sort of be distributed out to all the other ones. So I'm gonna hold down Option and drag in the middle of the pipe, and you'll see that what it's created here is this little thing. It's called a router. And so now I have my devil shot going into the router. From the router, I can pipe that out to as many things as I want, and it's nice and neatly organized. Now, hopefully it's already becoming clear why I think this is such a big deal. You can glance at this. The devil shot is going into two keyers. Visually, you can just tell, and obviously they're going to be combined at some point. All right, so let's go into the second keyer, and the first thing I need to do is change this mask that's being used. And so what I want to do is basically grab all of these points here, and I'm just gonna bring them down like this, right? So that I sort of have a little bit of overlap for the bottom part of my matte, okay? And then I can actually just delete some of these extra points that I don't need, like that, kind of clean things up a little bit. All right, and there we go. And so now I have the bottom. Now, obviously the keying settings are not correct. You can still see some green in there. So what I need to do is reset that keyer. And because I reset it, I also reset the garbage matte setting. So I need to make sure I invert that. And then I can come in and I can pick some colors for the floor and pick these colors. And knowing that Mark solved this part with Roto, I'm not gonna mess with it. I'm just gonna check the alpha channel, and I see a little bit there. All right, and then I'm gonna lock my color settings. I'm gonna zoom in here, and I'm going to adjust that soft range again. All right, and I want as much softness as I can possibly get, all right? And frankly, I can get away with a lot because I know I'm gonna have to use Roto to get the shoes and to get the bottom of this. And then this part here, this is gonna be taken care of with a core matte, so I'm not too worried about that either. Cool. And so now I have two mattes that I would like combined, please. All right. Also, this garbage matte needs to be adjusted because it's picking up some things that I don't want. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do a quick and dirty job like that. All right, so how are we gonna merge these two things together? Well, first let me get rid of this, this transform. So what we're gonna use is, believe it or not, a merge node. So I'm just gonna add a merge node here. And in this case, it doesn't really matter if I use a foreground or background. There's no right or wrong order in this case. So I'm just gonna grab one and go here, one goes here, and then this goes into the transform. And there we go, okay? And it's kind of that simple. And again, to beat a dead horse, I can see what's happening. Devil shot being keyed twice. And in fact, wouldn't it be nice if the compositor left me a hint as to what was going on here? I'm gonna add a node, and it's called an underlay. And an underlay is literally just a helper node, and I can sort of resize it, and I could rename this. I could call this the upper edge key. And now, if I grab this, it actually will also select the nodes that are inside of it, and I now have a hint as to what that was. And I could copy that and paste it and put it here and rename that the lower edge key, like so. All right. And now I don't know. I kind of want to beat the dead horse again. Isn't this great? Isn't this just wonderful? I just wanted to take a moment to point out that even though I am gushing about Fusion right now and I'm really clearly geeking out on the node-based workflow, I'd say 99% of the time I am still compositing in After Effects. After Effects is amazing for the type of work motion designers do, which is typically based on time and things moving and combining animation with shot elements. And Fusion can do all of those things, but it's not built for that. It's gonna be really, really painful actually to do something like a ball bounce in Fusion. Yes, you can do it, but why the hell would you? So I don't want you to get the wrong impression. You are most likely going to stay in After Effects for almost everything you do. But it's nice to know that tools like Fusion exist. It's nice to know what they're really good at, and then you can make your own decision later on if you want to go down this rabbit hole. All right, so last thing we want to do is do a core mat, because if I look at through this merge, and let me give myself a little bit of room here and look at the alpha channel. So I've got some nice edges, don't I, right? What I don't have is a filled in head. I have a transparent head and Joey no likey. So what I'm gonna do is just copy one of these. I'm just gonna actually click on the underlay, and I'm gonna copy it, and I'm gonna paste it down here. And I am going to call this one the core mat, okay? And we're gonna build it basically the same way Mark did in After Effects. It's just gonna require a few different tools, okay? So let me first delete this polygon because it's gonna be easier if I copy this one from the upper edge key, and I'm gonna paste that. I'm just gonna connect it to my garbage map. And then I just need to make sure that the feet are included. So then I'll connect my keyer to the footage, like that, okay? And you can see the noodles are starting to get a little wonky. You know, if that bothers you, it doesn't actually affect the compositing at all. But if it bothers you, you can always move things around and adjust. And so if I look through the chroma keyer now, you'll see that I've got what appears to be just not a great mat. So what I'm gonna do is reset that keyer, all right? I'm gonna go back in and tell it to invert the garbage mat. And then what I'm gonna do is, looking at the alpha channel, well, first I wanna get a little bit of help. So I'm gonna pick one green color. And what I'm gonna do is actually be really heavy-handed with this thing, like terribly heavy-handed, just like that, okay? So now let's lock the color picking and let's zoom in nice and close. Now these edges are really gross, and I normally wouldn't even care about that. I am gonna adjust the soft range a little bit to get rid of some of these little pixels in the background, but I'm not gonna go too heavy with it. And the reason is I really want to close these holes, and I've almost completely done that. And so then the next thing I could do is go into my matte options here and adjust the white threshold down, which can help a little bit. And then there's even some tools on here to expand and contract the matte. Now, unfortunately, they don't go far enough, but by expanding it even just that little amount, I mean, I've basically filled in every hole that needed to be filled in, okay? So now I've got this horrific matte. It's terrible, but that is the beginning of any good core matte, is a terrible matte. All right, so the next thing I need to do is just what Mark did. I need to erode that matte. Now, in After Effects, this is generally a pretty trivial thing because there's an effect called matte choker. And in Nuke, another node-based compositor, there's something similar. In Fusion, there's a few ways to do it, but generally you gotta kind of roll your own. So here is where node-based compositors can be a little more finicky. You really need to understand what a matte choker is doing because you kind of have to build your own sometimes, okay? So here's what we're gonna do. I am going to add a tool here, and it's called Erode and Dilate. All right, so let me add that. And let me show you what it does. So if I plug the output of this chroma key here into Erode and Dilate, and I come over here and I start adjusting the amount, I have to look through the Erode and Dilate, by the way. All right, you can see what it's doing. It's basically sort of like growing all the pixels at the same time, okay? Very interesting. It's also doing that on the alpha channel, okay? The alpha channel is actually the only thing I care about. I don't want it to do it on all these other channels, right? And I can actually turn all those off if I want to, so that it doesn't screw up the pixels there. It doesn't really matter in our case, okay? But I may wanna mess with the filter because you can see the filter is set to box and it's actually making a very boxy sort of result. If I go to linear, does this. If I go to Gaussian, it does this, circle. And circle is actually kind of what I want, okay? So what I want to do is erode the matte. I want it to go less than 0 and just eat in just a little bit like that, okay? And then what I want to do is blur that result. Well, there's no blur in this, right? Because this is just the erode and dilate tool. So next, I'm going to need to add a blur node, okay? So the result of this goes into the blur node. And in the blur node, I want to make sure that I'm just blurring the alpha channel, right? And I don't know how much I'm going to need to blur it. Yeah, probably just a little bit like that, okay? And so then if I look through this, okay, I'm not quite there yet because I have the right alpha channel, but the image doesn't look right. What the heck is going on? So After Effects hides things from you. And most of the time that makes things easier, okay? It's generally a good thing. But one of the things it does that you probably, until this moment, never knew it did, is it takes the alpha channel of your layer and it multiplies it against the color channels. And when I say multiply, I mean literally multiplies it. Like black, think of black as 0 and white as 1. So if you multiply 0 times, these pixels here, they would turn black. They would be completely transparent, okay? And the white pixels are 1, so those wouldn't change at all. And these gray ones would be sort of transparent, right? So that step has to happen now. So Fusion's not gonna automatically do that step for us. We're gonna have to do it ourselves. Easiest way I found was with a merge node. So remember, if we kind of step back for a second, we've got our upper and lower edge keys being merged together here. And so what I need to do next is add another merge node, right? And I can add it, just go like this and add it here to merge in the next piece, okay? So it may seem weird to have a merge into a merge, and obviously if we had more pieces, there'd be more merges. Just know that this is very typical to have almost like stair steps of merges, just connecting various pieces. So for the core matte, I want that core matte to be the foreground. I want everything else to be the background. So let's make sure this is set up right. So here's the background is yellow. So I'm gonna connect that first, okay? Then the foreground is going to be the output from the chroma keyer, okay? And then the mask is going to be the output from the blur. Now, so you can really see the effect of that. What I'm gonna do is first look through this merge node, okay? And you can see that I had all these pixels. If I then look through the next merge node, boom, they're gone. That's because I have added this alpha channel basically on top of everything, okay? So it may seem like a lot of steps. You may not truly understand what I did here because I had to manually build my own matte choker, but all of this is exactly what Mark did inside of After Effects, okay? And then the result of that gets transformed and there you go, okay? Now I'm not gonna rebuild the entire composite in front of you. That would probably be really boring because you already saw Mark do it once, but also it just takes a long time. And really the point of this lesson is just to show you some of the differences between Fusion and After Effects, between nodes and layers, and that's what we're gonna do now. So here is the completed node tree. This is the one I showed you a little bit earlier, and just to give you an idea of sort of the scope of it and kind of how big these things can get. I know this looks like a lot. This is not a lot. And just to reiterate, every single step that you see here was also done in After Effects and in Mocha. So let's take a look at some of these pieces here. Let's zoom in and see what's going on. So you can see we had the upper key, we had a core matte, we had a lower key. What's all this stuff over here? Tracks. Okay, well, Fusion has a built-in tracker. It's actually very good, and it's a point tracker and a planar tracker. And so I was able to do exactly the same thing that Mark did to get decent masks for the shoes. So let's take a look so I can show you what I did, all right? So over here, I have 3 nodes that are polygon nodes. And as you can see, this is the left shoe, this is the right shoe, and they're running into these nodes, which are actually transforming them based on the tracking data from the Fusion tracker, okay? So this is working a lot like the Mocha AE plugin does, and this is built right into Fusion, and it worked really well. And then I'm merging all of those mattes together to create this, okay? And then this obviously is the matte that I used to merge on top and bring those feet back, right? So before, you sort of have your core matte and you have your top and your bottom edge matte, and you merge those feet on, and there you go. Okay. Now, this is a really important one. This node right here is actually doing the spill suppression for me. And just to show you sort of how that one works, I'm gonna actually copy it. And I'm gonna bring it over here just so you can see exactly what it's doing, right? So if I run the footage into it, you can see that it's basically taking care of all of the spill. So that's what I did there to get rid of the spill suppression. And I could have done it before the key and then applied all of these as mattes, but instead I just did it after the key, which is actually the same way Mark did it. Then what I did was I added a glow on top of this. And the way I did that was actually kind of interesting because it's not something you would typically do in After Effects, but in a node-based compositor, it just kind of made sense to me. What I did was this. I ran the result of my spill suppressed keyed thing. I ran it into another keyer called Ultra Keyer. And I was able to pull a pretty decent key for the red cloak and then add a glow on top of that and merge that back on top of my footage. Now, the reason that I went through these hoops was because if I turn this keyer off, okay, you'll see that the glow was affecting my face and my hands and other things I didn't want it to. And the way Mark took care of it was just by masking that out. I could have done that too, but I thought it might be even easier to just pull a quick key and use that as a mask and a merge node. And this is the kind of thing that literally takes 30 seconds when you're in a node-based compositor, because it's just like you're taking a little detour and then coming back to the main road, okay? And then there's my transform node. Here's an interesting thing that I want to show you. So if I kind of scrub through this, you can see the transform node is moving. I would also like to point out how fast Fusion renders. It is far faster than After Effects. I'm gonna set my playback range here so I can loop this a little bit. So there's a little bit of a wiggle on this. Now, how do we do that? Well, Fusion, just like After Effects, has something kind of like expressions. It actually does have full-blown expressions in it. I don't know them, but it also has something really handy called modifiers. Any property that's in this little property window here, you can control click on, say, the center XY property, and you can modify it with a bunch of these modifiers. And so what I did was I added the perturb modifier, and there's actually two of them, one for position and one for rotation. And I just adjust those settings, and it's basically a wiggle effect built right into Fusion, or you can also write expressions. Cool. Then from there, I wanted to do a light wrap, okay? And the light wrap, some compositors have it as a built-in node. Fusion didn't, or I couldn't find it, one of the two. And so I built my own. And building your own is not really that hard if you understand the recipe. Right, so what's going on here is the result of the transform is going into, first, an invert color node. It's really just inverting the alpha channel. Then I'm blurring that alpha channel. Then I'm combining it with the original alpha channel using this minimum mode, which gives me, it almost looks like an inner glow. So like in After Effects, you could get something very similar by taking this keyed layer and just applying an inner glow effect to it. But this is how you would build it from scratch. And you could also do this in After Effects too, but in a node-based compositor, I think it's a little more intuitive to see what's happening. So now I have this matte, which I can then merge with my original foreground. And what am I merging it with? Well, what I've got here is my background layer that I brightened a little bit, and I am using this alpha channel with that background. And if you look closely, if I zoom in a little bit, you'll be able to see that the edges of the devil are actually being sort of brightened by the background. And the easiest way to see this is if I just sort of step through it. So here's the before, and then there's the after, okay? A little bit of a light wrap, and I can control every piece of it using these nodes. And then all of that just gets merged over the background, okay? And there we go. Now, of course, you could go a lot farther. I didn't add grain. I didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't even color correct this. all of those tools exist in Fusion or any node-based compositor, but hopefully now you see that using a node-based compositor, it does require a little more manual labor than using After Effects. There are things that After Effects can just do for you, or there are effects built in, like matte choker, that, there's not a one-to-one equivalent in Fusion, and frankly, in some cases, even in Nuke. All right, so now you should at least be aware of some of the cool advantages of using a node-based compositor like Fusion over After Effects. And again, as a motion designer, you're almost always going to use After Effects. But there's one thing I haven't talked about yet, which is actually probably the best reason to eventually learn a node-based compositor, is it makes you better at After Effects in kind of a strange way. In After Effects, channels are generally hidden from you. It's not often that you're going into the red channel or the green channel or looking only at the alpha channel, but in a node-based compositor, you're doing it all the time. And it kind of rewires your brain to think like a visual effects artist. And all of these principles transfer over one-to-one into After Effects. The tools are called different things. After Effects has different strengths and weaknesses, but in the end, both tools do the exact same thing. And learning one, it's almost like learning a second language. It can almost improve the way you use your first language, which for me is After Effects. So I hope this was really informative and maybe even a little interesting to you. We're gonna link to Fusion, and hopefully by the time you're watching this lesson, there is still a free version that comes with DaVinci Resolve. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of Focus Week.